So first thing I need to do is set up AutoCAD correctly. So if you go ahead and open up AutoCAD normally, and it doesn't give you the option of changing any of the settings, what you want to do is go to the command line, and you're going to type in startup, and then press enter. And so you want to change it to 1, or type in 1, and then press enter. And then what you have to do is actually close out AutoCAD and open it back up. And when you open it back up, after doing that, you should see these options here. So what we're going to do is go to the quick setup, and we're going to change some of the default items here. So we're going to select architecture. And then this is essentially the working area. It's really all not that important. This is going to be 60 feet by 40 feet. All right. And then there's some other things we're going to want to do here. So for example, we want to change the drafting settings. And this is really your own preference. I generally don't have the snap on. It can make things a little bit difficult, but I will turn for the architecture this adaptive grid off, and then we're going to select 2D model space. I'll select OK. And the other thing is, before you leave here, maybe go to the object snap and the polar tracking above here and just verify the midpoint. And this is really my preference. And I always like to have, and you should have the polar tracking on. All right, and you see all the dots there? That's the grid. And if you haven't figured that out already, you want to have the show menu bar. Gives you a lot more features here. And so then let's go ahead to the multi-line. And this is actually, what it does is it creates 2 lines instead of 1. And this would be for a wall. So we're going to say new, and we're going to call this wall. Continue. And so what this is essentially is a way, right now if you see it's at 0.5 and minus 0.5, that means it's a 10-inch wall. But we want to have a 5-inch wall. All right, so we're going to type in 5-inch wall with end caps. All right, so the end caps essentially, if you look behind the screen, what's happening is it's closing that off. Right, so we're going to have in the beginning and in the end. And then the other thing we need to do is you select on the offset, and we're going to change it from 0.5, excuse me, to 2.5. I'm sorry, so that was 1 inch before. So we want to make sure it's 2.5 and minus 2.5. All right, and then make sure that you select set current. If you don't select set current, it's going to give you a very odd shaped wall that doesn't work. And so this is a 5-inch thick wall. So it's very important that you do that. All right, and then let's go to our toolbars, AutoCAD, and you'll notice if you go down to the object snap. Now, I'm not a big fan of this. It never actually seems to work all that well for me, but some people have better luck than I seem to. But this exercise does use it. I'm going to show you some ways around it, though. All right, so I've turned the grid off here of my top. And so let's go ahead and start building this. And so you go to draw and you select the multi-line. Now you want to look at this justification. It's kind of funny because there's top and bottom, and in reality we're going to be working in the scale. We're going to leave it at 1. So we're going to type in the starting point here, which is going to be at 0, 0, and we're going to point the mouse in the left direction, and we're going to then type in our dimensions. And so if you look here, I've started where that door is opening. It's 11'6", and then it's 25 feet 6 inches up and 30 feet over. Now you can actually type this in inches, but what you do to make this work is you type in 11 feet dash and then 6. You don't need to put the 6 inches because it defaults to inches anyway. So AutoCAD always defaults to inches. So now when I'm going up, I'm going to type in 25 feet dash 6. enter. And then I'm simply going to move the mouse to the right. It's on that polar snap. So then I'll go ahead and type in 30 feet. Oh, I'm sorry. So that's actually 25 feet, 11 inches. Yeah. So I'd make accommodation for these. So I'm looking at my drawing as I go here. All right, so you're going to really, it's important that you look at your drawing. Now, this is a really tricky thing here, and I'm never really all that good at it. So let's go ahead and do our dimensions first. And you'll notice they're if depending on your settings, they're really small. So there's a kind of a trick to this. Let's go into our dimension style. We're going to modify this. Now, we're going to change this. We're going to change this to architecture. And so in the primary units, it's default to decimal. We're going to go to architecture. Now, the funny thing is, if I just do it here, it's not going to work. If you remember how small it was. So this is really helpful. This scales everything, the spaces, the arrows. So I've done this. I already know I need to scale this up by 30. So I'm going to change 30. It changes all the spacing. Otherwise, you have to manually do that. And so there's that 25 foot 11 inches that we put in. So that is about the scale I want. It looks good. So now let's go ahead and just confirm the dimensions that I've of the wall here. And I'm trying to do this in a manner that reflects what my final drawing is going to look like. All right, so that should be 25 foot dash 6. All right. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add that little gap for the door. It's a 3-foot gap to AutoCAD. We've got this object snap. And so I'm going to, the way this works is you go to the object snap and you've completed the lesson. In this lesson, we're going to continue working on the floor plan design. So I've essentially built the overall shape up to this point, and I need to add that door. So there's a couple different ways to do it. You can either use the line tool or you can use this multi-line with the offset. So the line tool is actually the easiest way to do it, where you just essentially are making a construction line. You start at the point, you type in 3 feet, and you know exactly where it's going to be starting, and snapping the multi-line tool, typing in my 1 foot 1 inch, press enter, and then I would point my mouse down and type in that 30 feet. So that's an easy way to do it. And by all means, do what's easiest. So another way of doing it is you go to the multi-line. And what you essentially are doing here is you're clicking on the snap to the end. And it's important that that green highlighted line is activated. It needs to be there. And then you snap at that that 36 inches, that 3 feet, and then you build uh, as normal. So either way is fine. It's a little tricky though, I find, with that offset and such. So I typically use construction lines or other methods. So then I'm going to come down here 30 feet and then move my mouse to the left on the x-axis, on the going minus, and I just type in positive integers. I'll type in 14 feet 9 inches, and then I go up, uh, doing the math here, 11 feet, and then type in 1 foot 1 inch. And so you want to verify all your dimensions before you get too far. So we're going to verify all this, and let's go to our dimensions. And it's important that you have that at 3 feet. That's an opening for a door. And then the corner here is 1 foot 1 inch, and I'm snapping it to keep that horizontal justification. And then we're going to go ahead and just verify this dimension. And I'm obviously doing this also in the way that I'm going to be presenting it. So I'm trying to make this as efficient as possible. Again, just verifying all these dimensions. This should be 14 feet 9 inches. And then we'll do up here 11 feet. And 1 foot 1 inch. Okay, so that looks good. Now let's go ahead and start building the other area here. So in the top left corner, there's a room here. Now this can be really tricky. I've seen the textbook try to just have you start at a midpoint, but you either use a construction line or there's actually a really another nice little tool. It's kind of cheating, but it's actually extremely efficient. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to type in I'm gonna get a dimension. So let's get this out of our way here. And I'm going to go to the dimension, and I'm following my drawing, and I'm going to click on the bottom corner with my dimension, and then I'm actually going to just go straight up and type in the dimension that I need, 12 foot dash 9, and then I'll type in enter. So what that has given me is a dimension, obviously that's 12 feet 9 inches. And I need that because that's what my drawing says. This is where that wall starts. So knowing that, it's obviously going to be accurate. Then I'll go to my multi-line tool that I've already set up, justification, and in this case, I'm going to select the bottom because it's going to be on the bottom of that wall. And I'm essentially going to click on that intersection. Now remember that wall is 5 inches, so if I'm looking at my drawing, I have to accommodate that. So the total is going to be 10 feet. And then I'm going to continue 1 foot 1 inch going up, and then I'll push enter. So now there's another way that I can also do this here. So let's go ahead and confirm this before I get too ahead of myself here. So 9 foot 7, and remember that wall thickness is 5 inches, so 7 minus 5 is 9 foot 2 inches. All right, so that looks good. And you're going to have to do math in these drawings. It's just there's no way around it. Okay, so verify that dimension. Now, if I'm going to do the multi-line, the thing that you need to know, and I don't know why it doesn't say, is when you go top, it equals right. When you go bottom, it equals left. So I'm just going to make a dummy little wall here, and then this is going to be the opening. So it's just easier because I don't have to worry about it getting off. I'm just building a little wall, and I'll delete it in a minute. That's actually, I think, the easiest way to do this rather than make lines and such. So then let's go ahead to the multi-line, and you're going to just want to make sure that it's on the top or the bottom of the right. It takes a little bit of practice. And then I can obviously, I've got this dimension here. I don't need this space. I don't want that space, so you want to delete that space. And now here's the thing. You're going to notice there's these intersections at the walls, right? And so we're going to have to eliminate that also. So verify all your dimensions. Make sure everything, before you get too far into it, make sure everything is the correct dimension. And I think these little tricks that I'm showing you can save you a great deal of time. I know they saved me a lot of time. It took me a long time to figure all this out. And we're all still learning here. So, all right, so let's go ahead and back this off so I have that more of an intersection with that one line. And so if you go up to modify object, and then you'll see the multi-lines, you're going to play around with these. Here's the open, and you essentially click the two walls. You have to be careful. Sometimes I'm accidentally selecting the dimension line, and that makes it a little tricky. So you go to the object, you go to multi-lines, and then you want to select here the open T, and you're selecting both walls. Sometimes it takes a few snaps till it activates. There it goes, right? And it's actually still live, so I don't have to go back to it. And so again, I'm selecting the wall. I have to be careful because what's happening is I'm selecting the dimension line. So there, that looks good, and you want to make sure that you do that, all right? And you've completed the lesson. In this lesson, we're going to continue working on the floor plan design for lesson 3. So let's open up our drawing, and we're going to start to build some of these rooms. And if you notice, it is giving these dimensions 11 feet, 6 foot 3 inches, and such. So I could either make construction lines, but I have found that by actually making the dimensions themselves, it makes my life a little bit easier, less steps. So we can scale in, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my linear, and I'm going to start looking, and I'm essentially transcribing all the dimensions that I have on my drawing, and I'm going to type in 11 feet, and then move to the right and snap it in place. And I'm going to continue to do this. So it's 11 feet. The next one is 6 foot 3 inches, and I snap it. To be very careful to snap at that end point, and then I'm pointing my mouse up on the y-axis, and I'll type in 6 foot 3 inches, and I'll keep it horizontally and vertically justified by snapping on each other. And I'm going to just continue this all the way up this side here. So I have the polar snap. I'm snapping on the wall, making sure I have that gap. Then I'm pointing my mouse up, and in this case, it'll be 5 feet dash 5, and enter. And you'll see it's 5 feet dash 5 inches. And then I'll go ahead and put the last one on this side of the floor plan, and this will be 7 feet dash 4, and snap it on so they're vertically aligned. And so what that does is it gives me the indicator where I will be putting these walls. So I need to extend this wall out. So if I already have that wall though, it's probably easiest just to build off of that. And I can go either way here. So draw, multi-line, and then the justification. Remember the top is to the right, the bottom is to the left. And so I'll type in, this wall is actually 2 feet 8 inches. So I type in 2 feet 8, and then I will go ahead and just verify that. And remember that is more of a construction wall. I'll be deleting that. So let's go to multi-line here, justification, and it's on the bottom. And then I'll snap it to the wall on the left. And I should be able to just verify that just by looking at it, that it is 11 feet. All right, so now this is kind of the same procedure. I find this is the fastest way to do it. You can either do construction lines, but this is what I find to be easiest. So let's go, and we're going to go to our multi-line, and then you have to be really careful of these, how you do this. So this is going to be 8 foot. So I want to just go ahead and put that in here. And then I'll go with my line here, and I'm basically going to drag that down and snap it. And it's important that 8 foot is on the inside of that wall. And remember, the top is to the right, the bottom is to the left in the justification. And so that should be 2 feet 6 inches up. And then I'm going to build my little door that's 2 feet 8 inches. And this, again, I think is the fastest way to do it. And I can also make sure everything's aligned properly. And then I push enter. All right, so just we want to verify as you go along, make sure all these, now I'll go here and let's just click this multi-line, and we're going to select the open T, and it takes a couple clicks here. Just sometimes you get the dimensions, which makes it a little tricky. And get both of them, and you should have that opening. It looks good. And I'm going to show you in a minute, in case you mess it up, how to fix this. And I'm going to purposely help you out here in a moment. Okay, so let's look at this one here. It's 5 feet 5 inches. So we've got this 6 foot 3 foot wall here. So let's go to the multi-line, and it should be on the, all right, let's see where we are here. So if you take that and you extend it out, it should snap. So this actually should be on the bottom, but let's just pretend like we're going to go ahead and work here because I can fix this. So let's type in I basically adding 9'7" plus 5 inches. So I typed in 10 foot 5 inches, right? So 9 feet 7 inches plus the wall thickness, right? So the overall is 10 feet 5 inches. And you're going to have to use your math here to do it. So let's type in, I'm going to add the dimension here. Again, this might seem counterintuitive to put your dimensions in first, but it's a great way to verify as you're building this. All right, so justification, remember that top is to the right and bottom is to the left. So in this case, we're going to select its top, and then I'll select the bottom, and so meaning that the wall goes to the right, and you'll have to play around with that to really understand what I'm talking about. And this one comes up 2 feet, and so let's do that right here. I accidentally made that. Let's do that again. Okay, so here I'm showing, so if you would go to the bottom, it would go to the left, and that's what we don't want, right? So we want to make sure it's to the right. So again, you want to play around with that just to make sure you're getting that. Okay, so, and then let's just go ahead and verify that. And again, you can always click on the text and just move it to where you want. It's a little tight in there, but I'm trying to follow that drawing as best I can. I prefer the arrows than the little tick marks. And you can actually make your own arrows if you're really fancy. Okay, so let's continue working here. And we're gonna just continue working on closing up all these walls. And so this is actually the door, but I've left it here on purpose because it'll let me easily build off of it. And so then I can delete it. I don't need that. That's where the door is. So you always want to verify your dimensions as you go along. And I'm going to show you how to, because we made an error here on this wall, but we're going to fix that in the next lesson here. So it's all good. All right, so you want to verify everything. So if I would actually dimension that, I would be off by 5 inches, the one above it, 2 feet 8 inches. All right, so let's just keep working here because we can always go back and fix things here. So let's go ahead and the open T here. We want to put a line there. All right, we want to get rid of that line right there. So there it is. And it's active, so I can just keep clicking and on those T's and getting rid of the that intersection. And so I'm going to show you in the next lesson how to actually put that line back in case you made an error here. So we've got this corner, and be careful you're not selecting the dimensions, and you are pretty much there. So just view everything and inspect your drawing, and you've completed the exercise. In this lesson, we'll continue working on the floor plan design, and this is lesson 4. So we have to finish the rooms. Let's take a look here. I've got most of this done, but if you notice here, there should have been a 5'10" space in there. And we accidentally constructed this instead of the bottom, we did the top. So, what do you do? Do you start over? No. What you do is actually this. Let's just verify this dimension here. And if memory serves me, I should be off by about 5 inches. So it should be 5'10", right? So how do you fix that? And of course, we could undo everything, but sometimes you're way into the project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in move. And so the nice thing is it's a 5-inch wall. All I need to do is select the top of that wall and move it down 5 inches, right? So then I can just go ahead and fix that. And I'm going to deal with that little hole later. You notice there's a little hole there, but let's just kind of continue working on here. So if you're kind of working and you make an error, you can just type in move and actually drag the whole wall and all the dimensions down there, right? So not a problem. And I'll show you how to fix that little gap there in a minute. So let's just kind of continue working on here. I've got this room that should have a 5 foot area, so it's justification. And remember, top is to the right, bottom is to the left. We're going to just keep working here. So I'm going to extend this out. Remember, I'm compensating for that 5-inch wall. So I can also just snap on the drawings from below, but here I went ahead and typed in that 10-foot 5 inches, and then I'm going to just clean this up as I go along because I'm going to get rid of this that T there in a minute. All right, so just verify all your dimensions here. So we'll click on this, and this should be 5 foot. Great, looks good. Okay. All right, so we're just going to continue building here, and you'll notice this one is on the wrong side. This is where the door is, so it's actually not all that important here. And you just play around with those multi-lines and where they go and where they snap from. Okay, so that is accurate. 2'4". It doesn't tell me what the other one is, but I know that if I on the justification, we're going to go on the top, which is to the right. If I click right there and go all the way up, well, I could just finish it here, but it actually goes up 5 feet 8 inches. So let's type 5 feet 8, enter, and then scale out a little bit. All right, so I can get rid of this door here and start cleaning this up. Just verify everything before I get too far ahead of myself. 5 feet 8 looks good. And I'm going to take that back so I have a T so I can clean that up with my multi-line feature. All right, so I'm going to zoom in here and see if I can fix this before I get a little too far. You notice I've got this weird gap there because I moved that whole wall down. So let's go to Object, and in the multi-line edit tools, I'm actually going to say Weld All. So you just got to kind of play. Essentially, I'm clicking the top and the bottom of that, and it's going to put that line back in there. All right, so now I'm back to my normal T where I can go to that multi-line edit tools, and I can either use the open or the close. You just have to play around with it. Be careful that you're not selecting the dimensions. So you'll see sometimes it does some weird things. So just go back and undo it. But it's a very handy tool here. All right, I need to select, there we go. Okay, so you can try around, and so it's actually active. I don't need to go back up and change it, and so we want to just make sure we're selecting both walls and the actual area in the middle. There we go. So I'm just going to go around and clean that up as best I can. I don't want to take too much time here because I want to get this demonstration done. So let's look at these other. Okay, so I've got a 6-foot internal wall from wall to wall. So we just can verify that. Okay, so that's 6 feet 11. Everything looks good. Remember, if it's off, there's show you some tricks on how to move everything. And that should be 2'9". And again, I'm verifying everything, but I'm also having my dimensions for my final output. So there's a couple dimensions and pieces I notice that I haven't put in here. But let's go ahead and get as much as I can fixed in this next couple minutes. All right, so let's clean wherever I can here, this open T. There we go. All right. and it's active, so I can just go around. It's actually easier to do at the very end when you have just the one command line, but I've been stopping and showing you how to do it all along. Okay, so we're pretty much there. I do see that there's a couple other dimensions I need. I notice there's actually a little wall area down at the bottom where I started off my 0, 0. I need to go back and fix, but let's just go ahead and finish this off. Remember, the outside dimensions are always the larger, so you could quickly look at it and see from the outside of this that it's 30 feet by 30 feet. And so I'm just adding the dimensions that I need to finish this off. And you'll put your name in here and such. So continue with the dimensions, and you've completed the floor plan design. Inspect all the lines and doors, and you've completed the floor plan design project.